Hey there, amazing friends. I warmly invite you to join me on this exciting journey by subscribing to my channel, liking, commenting, and sharing my videos. Every like, comment, and share brings us closer together and fuels my passion to create more great content. Your support truly makes all the difference. Thank you for being the heart of this community. Locked inside the world's quietest room, the science behind the eerie power of absolute silence. Ever since people began to measure and manipulate sound, there has existed a fascination with the opposite extreme, silence. While everyday environments are filled with background noise, whether it's the rustling of leaves, the hum of electronics, or distant traffic, there are specialized spaces in this world designed to be as quiet as physically possible. These spaces, known as anechoic chambers or soundproof labs, strive to reach an acoustic state so silent that one can hear the sound of their own blood rushing or detect the faint vibrations of their muscles twitching. For some, this might sound peaceful, even meditative. For others, it is the stuff of nightmares. The phenomenon we refer to, the quietest room on Earth, is typically found in specialized research facilities or audio testing labs, where the decibel levels drop below the threshold of human hearing, and the body's internal rhythms become shockingly loud by comparison. Stories circulate about individuals who, upon entering such a quiet room, can only withstand it for a few minutes before they emerge disoriented, drenched in sweat, or in some cases, merely panic-stricken by the intensity of what they perceive as silence. But how can silence be intense, you might ask? To explore that question, we must first delve into what it means to have no external sound and how the human brain reacts to the abrupt absence of auditory input. This journey will include peering into the architecture and technology that creates these ultra-quiet spaces, the science behind why absolute silence can be unsettling, and the real-life experiences of those who stepped inside the quietest rooms on Earth, only to find that sometimes the loudest noise is the one inside our own heads. In conventional life, even in the dead of night, we're never truly removed from background noise. The gentle hum of a refrigerator, a car passing down the street, a faint breeze rustling the leaves. These soft, consistent sounds form a baseline that our minds learn to filter out. We think of silence as the absence of anything noticeable, but in real terms, near complete silence is so alien that our senses struggle to adapt. Indeed, the quietest places on Earth measure in at negative decibels, which is to say, they are quieter than the threshold of average human hearing. Anechoic chambers built by top research labs or audio companies can achieve 9 or 10 dBA, weighted decibels, far below a typical quiet living room, around 30 decibels, or even a whisper in a silent library, around 20 decibels. The difference is orders of magnitude on a logarithmic scale, making these spaces many times quieter than normal quiet. The architectural marvel behind achieving this near absolute silence involves multiple layers of innovation. Typically, these rooms are suspended within another structure to eliminate external vibrations. Walls, floors, and ceilings are lined with wedges of foam or fiberglass that absorb sound waves rather than reflecting them back. Beneath a mesh or wire floor, more layers of sound-absorbing materials extend downward, ensuring that any reverberation is minimized. Airborne noise from HVAC systems is ducted and silenced meticulously. The result is a dead room acoustically, an environment so free from echo that any noise made inside fails to bounce off surfaces and returns no reflection to the ears. This lack of echo is where the term anechoic, meaning no echo, comes from. People stepping inside typically say they can hear their own breathing with startling clarity, each inhalation and exhalation amplified by the vacuum of external noise. Some even hear the wet clicking of their eyelids blinking, which in normal environments is utterly drowned out. The first few moments in such a room are often experienced with curiosity. how wonderfully serene to be free from the chaos of daily soundscapes. Yet, after the novelty wears off, many become uncomfortably aware of the internal workings of their own bodies. The faint hum of blood coursing through their veins, the gurgle of their stomach, the pulsing throb behind the eardrums. These sensations, overshadowed in the normal world, rise to the forefront of perception, underscoring how the body itself is never truly silent. The internal noise merges with the knowledge that there is nothing external to anchor one's sense of place. As a result, orientation can become unsteady, leading to mild dizziness or disorientation, especially if one tries to move around. Some labs discourage individuals from walking unaided in an anechoic chamber because the absence of echoes to orient them can disrupt balance. People often ask, does extreme silence cause hallucinations? The short answer is not exactly, but under these conditions, the brain, starved of usual auditory input, may amplify or invent signals. Researchers have found that in quiet rooms below a certain decibel level, participants sometimes report hearing faint beeps or high-pitched whines that don't exist. The mind, desperate for stimuli, can create illusions of sound, akin to how the eyes might see patterns in total darkness. While actual hallucinatory episodes remain uncommon, the sense of heightened bodily awareness can be so strange as to be distressing. Indeed, the phenomenon of sensory deprivation is well studied in psychology. Prolonged absence of external input can lead to a floating sense of unreality. The quietest rooms in the world exemplify a partial but profound form of auditory sensory deprivation. Take, for instance, the Orfield Laboratories in Minnesota, once recognized by Guinness World Records as containing the quietest room. People who step inside often find the experience mesmerizing at first. The story goes that no one can endure the chamber for more than an hour or so without symptoms like claustrophobia, dizzy spells, or intense anxiety. Some last mere minutes. The staff recounts how visitors often laugh initially, enthralled by the hush, only to become increasingly uneasy. The sound of their own heartbeat and swallowing feels invasive, too personal, and after a short time, the novelty transforms into an urge to escape back into the comforting hum of normal life. Yet, these anechoic chambers are not built simply to test human tolerance. They serve pragmatic functions. Manufacturers test products, from appliances to vehicles, to see how much noise they emit, measuring the smallest possible audio signals without interference from echoes. Audiology researchers examine hearing thresholds, mapping how the ear responds to minute sounds in the purest environment. Some advanced technology firms calibrate sensitive microphones or audio equipment in these rooms. The design eliminates any external variables, ensuring that any measured noise truly comes from the device under test. These practical uses overshadow the more lurid rumors that the rooms are used for psychological experiments, or that they stand as torture devices. In reality, the high cost of constructing and maintaining such facilities is justified mostly by industrial and scientific necessity. Perhaps the real intrigue arises when individuals do volunteer for psychological or sensory exploration in these silent chambers. In certain studies, participants are placed in them for extended periods, monitored for physiological and mental responses. The results vary. While some people exit claiming to have found an almost meditative clarity, a large fraction speak of anxiety, claustrophobia, or hearing phantom noises. The difference might hinge on personal predisposition. Someone comfortable in solitude and mindful living may handle the quiet better than someone used to constant audio stimulation. Environmental psychologist Dr. Naomi Fielding has commented on how these silent experiences can trigger introspection, forcing participants to confront their internal states more honestly than daily distractions usually allow. She calls it the mirror effect of silence, an auditory reflection of one's mind. The notion that absolute silence can be louder than noise in terms of psychological impact resonates with historical accounts too. Monastic orders in the distant past recognized that long periods of silence could bring spiritual revelations or mental upheaval, depending on the individual. The monastic vow of silence, while not physically enforced by an anechoic structure, still parallels the principle that removing external auditory stimuli intensifies the conversation with the self. The extreme version, courtesy of modern acoustic engineering, simply supercharges that effect. To illustrate the point further, consider a journalist's account. This reporter, braving the quietest room at a well-known audio lab, spoke of how within the first few minutes he felt a sense of awe at hearing the faint crackle in his ear canals, the internal rhythms of his body. After 10 minutes, his breath sounded deafeningly loud, and the rustle of his shirt fabric was jarringly sharp. By 15 minutes, the sense of gravity seemed off. He felt compelled to sit down to keep from losing his balance. He also heard an occasional phantom beep, as though a device were beeping somewhere in the distance. Realizing it was a hallucination triggered by auditory deprivation, he found himself strangely unsettled, even though he rationally understood what was happening. At around the 25-minute mark, he left voluntarily, heart pounding with relief as he re-entered a corridor with normal background noise. Others report that after prolonged exposure, one's own mind starts producing a hum or ring, reminiscent of tinnitus, but unconnected to any actual physical ear damage. It's the auditory system's attempt to fill the sonic void with some form of feedback. This phenomenon underscores how attuned humans are to the presence of ambient noise and how much we rely on it as an anchor for orientation, comfort, and normalcy. In daily life, we rarely notice how essential background sound is until it's stripped away entirely. From a purely scientific standpoint, the quest to build quieter rooms has spurred remarkable achievements in acoustical engineering. Materials used in these labs must have extremely high sound absorption coefficients, often shaped into wedge-like structures to reduce reflection to negligible levels. The floors in advanced anechoic chambers are often suspended floors made of a taut wire mesh or platform set above even deeper layers of foam wedges, ensuring no sound reflection from the ground either. The result is an environment with near 100% absorption of any wavefront hitting the walls. In some extreme designs, the entire room is itself suspended on vibration-damping springs to prevent external building vibrations from traveling inside. Achieving 0 or negative decibel readings is not trivial. It demands both advanced design and rigorous maintenance to ensure no small air leak or structural crack allows external noise to creep in. Yet it's not only labs that cultivate absolute quiet. Certain high-end tech corporations have installed smaller-scale versions of these chambers for product development. In these hush labs, engineers perfect the near-silent operation of gadgets, fans, or advanced computing rigs. A smartphone manufacturer might test how a phone's subtle vibrations or micro-mechanical sounds measure up in an environment where the quiet allows them to detect mechanical flaws of mere decibels that normal environments would mask. The drive for near silence in consumer devices, ironically, is propelled by the existence of these quiet rooms, forging a synergy between engineering demands and scientific curiosity. But beyond the utilitarian aspect, what keeps drawing people's fascination is the raw psychological and philosophical experience of such a place. We live in a world saturated with noise, from traffic and chatter to music and constant digital pings. The idea of stepping into a space so silent that one hears their own heartbeat or the fleeting rustle of muscles becomes almost mystical. Some interpret it as a modern spiritual retreat, a forced introspection that redefines their sense of self. Others recoil, describing it as an antechamber to panic, a place that heightens every worry in one's mind because there is nowhere else for the focus to go. This duality of wonder and discomfort forms the core reason stories about the quietest rooms on Earth endure. One might ask, do these anechoic chambers verify the upper limit of a person's endurance? Reports vary widely. Some claim that no one can withstand longer than 45 minutes before intense discomfort sets in. Others say they endured hours, finding a zen-like calm in the hush. The truth is that experiences differ drastically based on factors like mental preparedness, natural tolerance for solitude, and, crucially, the expectation of what might happen in total silence. The mind is a powerful predictor. If one believes they'll face torment, they might well create that torment in the void of any external audio cues. From a cultural standpoint, the notion of an environment so silent that it reveals the subtlest bodily noises taps into primal fears of isolation and emptiness. Tales abound of employees at certain labs who refuse to spend time alone in the chamber after dark, describing it as if the silence carried a presence or an intelligence. Of course, these are anecdotal tales shaped by imagination, but they highlight how silence can be perceived as an active force rather than the absence of one. Where noise is the norm, silence becomes exceptional, a phenomenon requiring explanation, caution, or even reverence. It's instructive to reflect on what all this implies about the human sensorium. We're built to interpret a world layered in sound. The rhythms of daily life, footsteps, mechanical hums, the drone of distant highways provide a tapestry of reassurance that we remain connected to society and nature. Remove that tapestry, and we become hyper-aware of any internal or external flicker of noise, turning inward to explore corners of perception typically overshadowed. The quietest room thus serves as a lens into the complexities of how hearing shapes our psyche, forging a rare environment that inverts the norm and reveals the intangible influences we scarcely ever notice. Also noteworthy is the question, could the quietest room be beneficial for mental health if used carefully? Some advocates of deep meditation argue that in moderate intervals, anechoic environments can heighten mindfulness, forcing practitioners to confront the swirling currents of their own minds. Yet such a practice would have to be carefully managed, given the potential for anxiety or sensory overload in the silent vacuum. Anecdotal reports from meditators who tried short sessions in an anechoic chamber speak of profound clarity or, conversely, disorienting mental kaleidoscopes. The environment, stripped of external stimuli, amplifies whichever mental state the occupant carries inside. Perhaps the final note in the tale of the quietest rooms is that absolute silence is, ironically, almost never absolute. Even the best designs cannot block every quantum of external noise, nor can they quell every bodily function. Our existence ensures noise at some minimal level. The continuous beating of our heart, the swirl of blood in our ears, and the respiration that keeps us alive remain unstoppable. We find that in seeking total silence, we uncover the subtle symphony of life's undercurrent. That revelation can be enlightening or unsettling, a reminder that the boundaries between outer and inner noise are fluid, that the hush can evoke introspection, wonder, or dread. Thus stands the story of absolute silence, a phenomenon simultaneously practical, psychological, and philosophical. From the labs that chase negative decibel readings to the visitors who last mere minutes in these sonic voids, from the legends of no one enduring more than an hour to the surprising acceptance some find in the hush, it remains a testament to the remarkable interplay between human perception and the environment. If you ever find yourself locked inside the world's quietest room, you may discover that silence, far from peaceful emptiness, is an arena in which your own thoughts, fears, and the pulse of your living body become thunderous. And perhaps in confronting that uncanny hush, you'll gain a new appreciation for the gentle tapestry of everyday noise that, in normal life, you never realized you needed.